Hello everyone and welcome to Week 9's lecture in English 112. Today's lecture is going to cover several things. First of all, your annotated bibliography, things related to that. I'll also be rolling out the presentation directions and of course covering your readings for this week. Now, first of all, we have the submission of your annotated bibliography, which is due this week by Sunday at 11:59 p.m. The link is under this week's content, so make sure that you give yourself enough time to attach it as a file. Again, the link will disappear at 11:59, and of course, don't rely on technology. It's never there when you need it, so give yourself a good amount of time to submit your assignment. I want to make a couple of notes on the annotated bibliographies themselves. The introduction, again, it needs to establish your credibility and also offer a brief history of your topic. So, for example, it's 2 to 3 pages. If you have, again, practical wisdom with your particular topic, then you might want to tell a short story or anecdote, which lets the reader know that you know what you're talking about. And also, if you refer back to the research videos that I created for you a couple of weeks ago, you want to provide a brief history or background of your topic. Now, you can get this information, say, from a newspaper article, magazine, something like that. Again, they're not scholarly sources, but they're considered popular knowledge. So you wouldn't have to necessarily cite, say, the recent scandal surrounding Lance Armstrong. Everybody knows about it, so you might want to just, for example, if your topic were something like blood doping or steroids, you might just want to briefly summarize this current event in order to establish a very brief history and understanding of your topic. I don't want to see any phrases like my paper will argue or my position is, or anything having to do with phrases such as that in your intros. So make sure that you go over not only your peers' comments on your rough drafts, but also go over and see if you have any phrases like that. It's too early in the process for you to say that my paper will argue this, that, or the other thing. You haven't done enough research yet, and oftentimes, as you go into more research, you delve into the topic, you may find that actually your position and the choices you want to offer your audience changes. So I don't want to see any phrases like that just yet. We're using this introduction as part of your final paper, so use it wisely. You'll also notice under this week's content that there will be directions for your presentations. You will all have to create a presentation, whether it's in PowerPoint, Prezi, or some other kind of presentation software. You will all be required to do this for this course, which is why you'll also need a microphone and webcam if you haven't purchased one already. I just want you to read over the presentation directions this week. I'll provide more instruction in the upcoming weeks regarding it, but just so you know what's coming down the pike. And in the meantime, continue researching your topic. Now on to this week's content, which the first part of which is all about the medium that you choose to convey your message. The medium makes or breaks persuasive moments and is intimately connected to kairos, which we talked about last week, which has to do with seizing the rhetorical moment. You'll want to make sure that you choose the correct medium for your message and you perform it for your intended audience. Otherwise, you might end up like Paris Hilton, Snooki, or even Kim Kardashian with their various foul-ups on the internet, some of which include various tapes, shall we say. Some things that you want to think about when you consider medium. First of all, you want to think about how fast of a response are you looking for. It's all about the pathetic or emotional appeal. Face-to-face encounters are the most persuasive because they involve all three of our appeals, that to logic, to emotion, and of course to credibility. Just going back to your presentations, they will require you to evoke the senses of persuasion while combining the skillful art of decorum, which of course we talked about at the beginning of the semester, which has everything to do with fitting into in with your audience through gesture, appearance, and whatnot. Now, if you think about it, each of our 5 senses actually has its own persuasive quality. Your language choice should, of course, evoke them. Sound is considered the most rational sense because it conveys ethos. For example, think about a speaker, whether he or she sounds confident in what they're saying, how loud they project their words, and whatnot, enhances their credibility and also makes the audience more open to their persuasion. Music is an exception, however, to sound because it, of course, conveys emotion or pathos. Smell is the most pathetic because it triggers a visceral response. Think about when you were a child and your mom or dad or other family member might have made breakfast and you could smell the bacon or the pancakes or waffles or whatever. Obviously, these sort of senses, these smells, will arouse us out of bed. And even think about it today as adults. Perhaps you smell freshly brewed coffee. That certainly triggers you to get up and get on with your day. Sight leans towards the pathetic because we often believe what we see. Think about, for example, those horrible ASPCA commercials that show us pictures of wounded animals. Of course, their underlying message is we want you to give us money, look at these pathetic animals, and so that emotional response may indeed trigger us to act by donating money. Touch is literally pathos or feeling. And taste also, much like smell, has to do with pathos. When you think about mediums, again, thinking about some of the most common forms in which arguments, to use a bad cliche, this day and age, come in. Email is often a combination of logos, which is, of course, the written word, and ethos, which establishes credibility. It makes it a very bad form for expressing emotion and garnering sympathy. So perhaps you have emailed professors in the past, asking for extra time on an assignment or wondering why you got the grade that you got. Perhaps you received and replied to your email from a professor because they can't tell what tone of voice you're using. I don't appreciate your snarky, what looks like snarkiness or whatever. TV as a medium mucks things up because, of course, images trump sound. We believe what we see over what we hear, and is therefore more emotionally appealing than email. Instant messaging, or text messaging, as it were, also smacks of ethos. It's all about the present tense. Think of any of the messages that you have sent to your friends or loved ones, or even your posts on your Facebook wall. We need the emoticons, such as the happy face, the smiley face, etc., to convey our emotional intent. Otherwise, people might misinterpret our message. Now, chapter 23 of our text deals with Cicero's 5 canons of persuasion. These are used, it's a classical model, they're used for inventing the most persuasive of speeches. It will also be the format that your presentations will take. And, of course, why would we want to argue with Cicero? He was, after all, one of the founding fathers of rhetoric and persuasion. So the first canon of persuasion is invention. This is, of course, where you dig up the materials for your speech. If you've noticed it all, throughout the course, our directions for various assignments, I employ Cicero's various uses of his canons of persuasion, even in directions to your assignment. You, of course, always want to ask yourself, what do I want? And what is the goal that I have in mind? Do I want to change my audience's mood, its mind, or its willingness to do something? And, of course, what kind of rhetoric do I need to achieve these goals? Remember that deliberative rhetoric rests on choice, so framing an argument in the future is, of course, your best bet and will be the final requirement for your final paper. You can also bring in values, but make sure that they are ones that your audience shares. Otherwise, you end up on the outside and not being very persuasive. You want to be careful not to blame any particular individual or group because it tends to put people on the defensive and thus, of course, makes them less persuadable. After you decide what you want from your audience, you need to nail down the issue itself. Is it simple or complex? If it is complex, you need to break it down into digestible parts. Again, smaller issues. If you focus too much on minute details, you're going to lose your audience's interest. You should always consider what a potential opponent might say about your issue and spend some time framing your argument in response to this. As I mentioned, you want to consider your audience's values, and of course, part of framing those values is thinking about the common places that we share as a class, and of course, mirroring those so that you, again, are on the inside, that you're talking their language, quite literally. Next canon of persuasion is arrangement. After you've constructed your basic argument, you will need to arrange it into a cohesive presentation. When presenting your argument, you want to move from ethos, which is of course establishing your character, to establishing facts, and then of course establishing an emotional connection for the very end to get your audience to do something. Again, ethos has to do with credibility. Ask yourself, are you sharing their values, exhibiting good sense, and of course showing disinterest, that their needs come before yours or even hurt you. You want them to identify with you. Logos is of course the meat of your argument. Do you have facts and figures to back up your claims? You can use narration here to tell the history of a matter and include those facts and figures. Again, you want to keep it succinct and relevant to the immediate argument. Going back to the introductions to your annotated bibliographies, you want to make sure that you're hitting on all these cylinders to make sure that you have a really good start for your presentations and of course your final papers. You want to make sure that you aren't including every single bit of information because again, it will distract the audience. And finally, emotion, trying to appeal emotionally, comes at the end and again asks you to consider what your goal is. Do you want your audience to be charged up through anger, fear, pity, patriotism, or some other emotion? Your speech should follow this structure, and as a warning, your paper will follow this structure as well. So it's really good to hammer down this. Your introduction gets your audience on your side. The narration states the facts. Division lists the points where you and your opponent agree and disagree. Again, this is where you want to appear reasonable. The proof is where your actual argument and evidence go. So after you list all the things that we should consider as an audience, you want to actually offer us choices that you think will be most advantageous. That's the proof. Refutation then destroys your opponent's arguments by showing just how reasonable your choices are. And of course, the conclusion can restate some of your most important points, but you also want to make sure that you're rousing your audience's emotions. With regards to style, you should of course use proper language, clarity, vividness, decorum, and ornament in your presentation. Again, consider who your audience is and what language would be most appropriate for them. Proper language has to do with words that suit the issue and the audience. So again, think of us as, somewhat educated, but we're not necessarily experts on your topic. Clarity has to do with boiling your down to its essential point in a manner that your audience can understand. Always, never sacrifice meaning and clarity. And vividness, of course, creates a rhetorical reality by telling a story with facts and figures. Let your audience imagine, say, a world or a future with or without the choices that you are offering. And of course, you guys remember our discussion of decorum from the beginning of the semester. It's a skillful art of fitting in. In some ways, you want to be like Eminem. Know your audience and know what language and topics suit them, and of course, which ones do not. Ornament has to do with the rhyme and pitch of your voice. Speak softly when you want to lure your audience in, and speak with a crescendo when you are building one thing on top of another to reach a climax. Your voice will guide your audience. And of course, there's also memory. What mental images do you associate with a particular concepts, ideals, commonplaces, or figures of speech? You will want to refer to them in your presentation, as you will be required to have some kind of visual apparatus. And of course, delivery has everything to do with making sure you present yourself and your materials in a confident manner to the class. Remember, you are the expert, and you want to persuade the class to adopt your reasoning and to take action.